I'm Michelle Ali Murati with TruthToTell Community Connections, and I'm here with Susan Stevens at the Projects for Pride in Living Enterprises building. And Susan, tell me what folks are doing here at this facility.
Project for Pride in Living Enterprises is the transitional employer that helps adults with barriers to employment get job skills to re-enter the workforce.
And when you say re-entry, we're talking about barriers to housing and employment due to...
Barriers due to chemical dependency issues, being through treatment, people that have recently got out of the prison systems that maybe haven't had a job in a long time.
You know, you got a couple of strikes against you. First, you're just coming out of prison. You don't have any local references, no recent references.
They always have that checkbox. Have you been convicted of a felony? To this day, my last offense was in 1985, and I still have to check that box.
My legal issues were also, publicized in the media. It was really hard for me to think about going back into the career that I had done before.
I think untreated alcoholism gets a lot of us in trouble, or untreated drug addiction. People don't want to do anything about it, or they just don't know how.
Well, I got out of federal prison in December 2011, found a telemarketing job just to keep the halfway house off my back, and I didn't like the environment there because I'm in recovery for drugs and alcohol, and I didn't feel good working around the people I was working with at the time.
And I felt really panicky. It's like, how am I going to stay free? I have no money. I'm a crazy person. I can't get a job. I've done a lot of time. I can't interact with people in the so-called free world.
I was in early recovery and recently out of treatment and living in a sober house and wanting to put my life back together. And getting a job was something that I knew I needed to have.
I did apply for SSI, but I wasn't wacko enough, evidently, to be allowed funding.
When I applied, I had to tell her that I had some jail time that was coming up, so I didn't know if they would be able to hire me. And she said, call me when you get out of jail and we'll see what we can do. And so I called her when I got out of jail, and I started working here a couple days later.
So I came over here to rebuild resources and applied for a trainee job out in the plant where they do manufacturing, so I got hired to do that.
It took me about 18 months before I could get employed, have my attention on things that are really important.
So what we're in right now is our custom apparel and promotions building. We do screen printing and embroidery on any types of shirts, caps, and so forth. So we train people to do that. And in addition to training the people, we have re-entry skills that we teach them in both classroom settings and one-on-one settings to give them what they need to be able to get a job.
And this gives us those local references, because we're fresh from the training here when we go to apply for a regular job at the end of this program.
I remember when I got my first job as a cashier in a store, that was a huge deal for me because one of my offenses was robbing a store. And to be trusted with money again, that was a huge deal for me. I think for ex-offenders, it's really important for us to know that there's someone out there who cares and is willing to step up and say, look, we're going to give you a chance. At 180 degrees, they knew my offenses in their entirety before they hired me, and in fact, that was part of the reason they hired me.
As I worked here and was able to use my skills and, kind of define what that was, I was able to work into a staff position.
Well, actually, I usually tell people they saved my life, and I mean that literally. Because if I hadn't come here, I don't know where I would have ended up. I'd have probably ended up going back out using drugs and alcohol again, and eventually I'd have ended up right back in prison.
Now we've heard from Susan, Timothy, and Donald about their experiences re-entering society, and we want to hear from our panel as well about other barriers that arise for ex-offenders and what we can do to help. Coming up next on TruthToTell Community Connections.